Okay, so I'm here to do another birth chart analysis for another client of mine. She was born on November 29th, 1992. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and discuss her first house placement. So if you guys know a little bit about astrology, the first house denotes your rising sign. So in her case, it is an Aquarius rising. She has Aquarius on the first house. So again, she's a naturally curious type of person. Again, she also could possibly be into occult sciences such as astrology or something like that, or she would be a good occultist in that matter. She can be a very spiritual person, and she's a type of curious type of mind, personality wise, that would be interested in knowing how the universe functions. So in this house, she also does have Saturn in the first house in Aquarius. So as a child, she could have been far more mature than her actual age, and she could have also been very serious, or she could have felt like her childhood was deprived of fun. So again, she strives for discipline with this type of placement, and she's the type of person to be, for the most part, very law-abiding. Also, this makes a person a very good worker, and it also adds durability to her personality. She's the type of person to be very pragmatic. With the aspect of Saturn onto the 3rd, 7th, and 10th house, this causes the 7th house, which you guys know deals with marriage or spouses, to have a very loyal partner and a faithful marriage most of the time. And there could also be a sense of discipline or duty in the marriage, since Saturn does kind of denote that discipline. Saturn teaches lessons, and it also restricts. Also, she is likely to marry someone who is older than her or far more mature. And she tends to like to make friends with people who are mature. She's also likely to marry late, and she would feel a duty to her spouse in marriage. So technically, she's the type of person to want to tend to her spouse, want to take care of them. Also, the aspect of Saturn onto the 3rd house, as you guys know, 3rd house deals with siblings, so she would have a very disciplined approach when it comes to her siblings. Also, her siblings could have caused her to feel stressed throughout her life, or she could have felt like her effort, or her the effort that she kind of puts into her siblings isn't equally reciprocated, and this could also cause her some form of stress. So she may give a lot to her siblings but not receive the exact same return. So aspecting onto the 10th house, she again is a very disciplined regarding her career, her work. She will not do well in jobs such as sales because they're not necessarily predictable. She needs something that's quite routine, because Saturn does represent routine or long periods of work. Or something that kind of proves to have some form of steady results. Also, she would probably like jobs that are more routine in nature. And she also strives for leadership roles most of the time, or she could possibly become the boss of people. But if she so does, she's going to be the type of boss that, not a whole people are going to like, because of Saturn being strict. Moving on, so also when Saturn is placed in Aquarius, this kind of denotes the type of work that you kind of need to complete in life. So in this case, it is placed into the 1st house. So again, the 1st house deals with the body, the physical appearance, or your general temperament, like your personality, your approach to life, how you kind of view things in life, your philosophies regarding life. So Saturn in Aquarius, she could take on the personality of wanting to organize things. She can also, with this placement, be a good financial advisor, and she also has a capability to be an event planner or something like that, because she has the capabilities to organize big social events if she wanted to. Also, since Saturn is naturally the ruler of Aquarius, she could also possibly gain from connecting with people, with networking. There could be some form of benefits with her, expanding her social circle. Having the Lord of the First in the first, since we're talking about, Saturn being in Aquarius. So again, this makes her very hardworking, and she's the type of person to want to, improve organizations, or she's the type to be very structured or disciplined regarding work. All right, so she also does have the moon in the first house, so she's gonna gain mental balance or mental peace by doing physical things, because that's what the first house represents. And it is, the original house is ruled by Aries, so Aries does, represent physical effort, movement. It represents athleticism. Having the moon here, she could benefit from doing like a lot of exercise or doing physical things to kind of bring her some form of mental peace, going for walks, etc., working out. Also, this could make her have like an attractive appearance to her physical appearance. Also, she could have a youthful appearance throughout her life, and she might give off the vibe that she's a happy-go-lucky type of person. Also, this could, since the moon also does represent where your mind is at in terms of its placement, she's also going to be preoccupied with her spouse a lot of the time, or her marriage, because it will aspect onto the 7th house. And also the moon does represent the mother, so mother would have played like a huge influence in her life, whether if it was either good or in a bad way. So she could have also, with having this moon placement, she could also suffer from lack of sleep, depression, chronic depression, diseases of the mind, since Cancer is the original ruler of the moon, and it's sitting in the 6th house. So with having a moon-Saturn conjunction here, so Saturn's influence is harsh on the moon, so again, her mind will be limited regarding creativity. She could possibly have, the result of not being able to be super creative like other people. She's also likely not to come off as like super expressive, like in terms of like maybe her emotions or something like that. Also, she's likely to experience turbulence in her life up until the age of 35 or 36. Also, mother could have not given a whole lot of affection to her, so this could have also like influenced her personality quite a bit. The lack of nourishment from the mother. Initially, as a child, she could have been like super emotional, but as time progresses, she would have turned more mature, and also through hardships, her mind tends to become tougher, and she might also come off as being rigid or stubborn sometimes. So having the moon in Aquarius, she also has the mental capabilities again to organize large parties. She can have the capabilities to like, help people network or to link people up. She's also gonna attract or like partners who have like unconventional ways of thinking, or also someone who is well connected or that could possibly benefit her through their connections. So moving on, having the Lord of the 6th in the 1st, so we're still talking about the moon and Cancer. So she will have a very analytical or scientific mind. She wants to understand things, and she will not believe something until she sees a functionality in something. Also, she has like a very unconventional mind. So for example, she might like want a certain wedding ceremony that isn't typical or isn't status quo. So that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about unconventionality. So moving on, having the Lord of the 12th in the 1st house, so she may be seen as someone who is kind of lost, even though like maybe she isn't that much on the inside. Maybe she kind of gives off that image to people on the outside, or someone who doesn't necessarily know what they're doing in life. Also, she can be psychologically impacted by people who are very spiritual, or people who are in distant or confined spaces such as hospitals or jails. For example, if someone like so happens to go to jail, this person the fact that they ended up going to jail could have somehow influenced her life quite a bit. Also with this placement, she can be prone to affairs and being impacted by them in her mind. Also, having this placement of Saturn being in the 1st can also make her again prone to depression. So moving on to the 2nd house. So the 2nd house rules family, rules assets, and it rules the income that you bring in through your job. So when we're talking about family, she has Pisces, Aries ruling the 2nd house. So she might possibly come from a very esoteric family since we have Pisces here. All right, so moving on. To her third or fourth house, it is being ruled by Taurus here. So when we're talking about the third house again, we're talking about siblings, communication. Also, so pertaining to her siblings, communication could have been like very good or bad. So also she has a strong willpower to go after what she wants. Because the third house does represent your own personal efforts, the efforts that you kind of put into things. So whether if we look at someone, whether if they're very driven, you kind of would look at the third house. So having, Taurus and then Aries placed here, it's a good placement. Either she'll have a very active relationship with the siblings, or they might possibly be enemies, or there could be some form of animosity amongst siblings. Communication among the family can be very aggressive, or she could possibly find herself being betrayed by one of her siblings. So moving on to the fourth house. So again, she could have grown up like in a very turbulent, home, like maybe filled with aggression. She could have grown up in a home that was quite turbulent. Taurus rules this house. Taurus rules Venus, and since the original fourth house is ruled by Cancer and the moon, Venus is not friendly to the moon. So therefore, Venus, which represents a family in astrology, is not stable with waning phases of the moon. So this could have also caused her to feel the mother gave more nourishment to her other siblings, and could have felt like the mother's lack of nourishment. Whenever she obtains her own home, also she'll want a big or beautiful home. So now we're moving on to the fifth house, which is being ruled by Gemini. So she will have a very communicative relationship with her children, or her children themselves can be very communicative. Also, they could be very clever, creative, artistic, and since we have Mercury's energy here in the fifth house, this can help her with having very good writing skills. Moving on, she also does have K2 in the fifth, so this would indicate that she would raise her children but not entirely be obsessed with children. So she's not going to be like the overbearing type of person when it comes to raising children, the people who want to micromanage everything what their children are doing. She's going to have that type of liberty with them. Again, this can indicate that she could do well in careers related to research or financial analysis. So moving on to the sixth house, it is being ruled by Cancer. So when we're talking about the sixth house, we're talking about enemies, debt, work, diseases. And since we have Cancer, and Cancer's energy is ruled by the moon, and again, the moon wanes it, think of it again like an ocean tide, it like goes up and down. So she's going to have a lot of ups and downs through life, and she could face a lot of opposition suddenly from people out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden she can make friends, and then she can all of a sudden make enemies through friends. She's also likely to maybe go through debt throughout life and then gain a lot of money all of a sudden. So again, it wanes. So like all of a sudden she could possibly incur a lot of debt. All of a sudden she could get rid of it all of a sudden. Also, since we're talking about the sixth house does represent karmic debt that you're here to repay in this life. It's not, karma that you can necessarily change. It's only said that a guru can help you change this, a teacher, someone who's like a spiritual advisor or something like that. Since we're talking about karmic debt and then Cancer ruling this house for her, so again, Cancer rules a family, so perhaps there's some form of debt that needs to be repaid through a family. Perhaps that's why there's some form of turbulence within the family. And it also rules emotions, it rules femininity, it rules motherhood. So also she did mention to me that she lost a little girl, apparently. So I feel like it's kind of associated to that. There might have been some form of karmic debt that she had to repay in this life, unfortunately. And therefore it had to do with like her fertility or something like that. So moving on, we do have Mars here. So Mars typically makes a person incur debt when it's placed in the sixth house, unless if it's debilitated. So in this case, it's not such a bad placement since, Cancer is debilitating the effect of Mars in the sixth house. So again, you would have typically incurred a lot of debt, but perhaps, eventually not so much. Her mother could have also been very disciplined towards her. Also, her mother could have been physically harmed, and this could also make her very clever. Her home environment could have been full of, deceptive energy here, or she could have been abused by someone in the household. Also, this too can apply to workplace or environment, since, when you're talking about the sixth house, that's essentially your day-to-day work. your routine. Like if she were to work like a normal job, she could possibly have enemies there. Also, this makes her very protective of her home or family, and this can also make her very cunning or clever with enemies. So having debilitated Mars in this house can bless her in her profession. So the sixth house is known as a house of service to people. Also, Cancer rules either home or, real estate. So again, her day-to-day routines could deal with homes, real estate. She currently has a home cleaning business, so that kind of makes sense. Also, it's the house of, providing a service. So you merge all those, the sixth house, being the house of service, Cancer ruling homes, family, and sixth house also ruling day-to-day work. So you could kind of merge all those things and kind of conclude that perhaps that's something that she's meant to do for a good portion of her life. And the Lord of the second and the sixth, Mars does well with this placement, so she's likely to defeat her enemies if she so has any. If she has diseases, if she happens to get sick, she has a capability of fighting off diseases or to have good health in that sense. Again, she's likely to face conflicts related to family throughout her life, since the second house of family aspects the sixth of conflict and enemies, okay? So moving on to the seventh house, it is being ruled by Leo, so she's likely to have a marriage that has some form of glamour to it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like Hollywood glamour, but perhaps she gets attention through her marriage or through her spouse, or there's like some form of attention shunned on them. Partner will likely be a little bit flashy or concerned with gaining admiration from people. Also, the partner could be a bit materialistic or creative, and her spouse might potentially be like well known for something, or they could be popular. After marriage, her career is more likely to take off. In her eighth house, it is being ruled by Virgo. So again, her joint assets, we're talking about the eighth house. It does deal with joint assets. It deals with in-laws. It deals with death, taxes, etc. So since we have Virgo here, Virgo is a very analytical sign, a very logical sign. So when we're talking about joint assets in the marriage, again, it's going to be very calculated. They're not the type to like splurge all of a sudden or be very reckless with money. Okay, so also since the eighth house does deal with in-laws, so since we have Virgo here, when it comes to communication with the in-laws, again, more than likely they're probably going to have like deep or intellectual conversations, the good ones. All right, so moving on. We also do have Jupiter in the 8th house. So in a female's chart, as you guys know, Jupiter can represent the husband, okay? So she's likely to meet her husband in a secretive way, or she will have like a very private relationship with her husband. Her marriage will become quite secretive. Her husband could, again, have the possibility here of keeping secret assets to himself, so he could have a separate bank account, just FYI. Also, he might suddenly reveal it to her, or she might suddenly come about to finding out regarding it. So maybe this is you finding out, or later on you come to find out later on. All right. This placement having Jupiter here, since Jupiter expands, this could make her like very sexual. The husband could be a little bit overweight. He would also like to spend money, and the couple can be very charitable. Also, they could possibly waste their money on spiritual causes or rituals. Also, since we have Jupiter's placement in the 8th house, which deals with the occult, this would give her a lot of interest into occult science. And this also could, again, possibly make her... So a lot of the people that I've done who are attracted to me, when I do birth chart analysis, a lot of you guys have the capabilities to be like psychics. I already found like 2 or 3. You guys don't know it, but perhaps it's because you guys haven't utilized the gift or you haven't worked with it. But again, she would have the capability of accessing some spiritual realm with having Jupiter here, because Jupiter is blessing, so it's a gift, it's a talent that you're receiving, and it's in the 8th house. So also, you could have blessings regarding anything related to the 8th house. So she may again be able to tap into a spiritual realm. Assets may be hidden. The husband is likely to hide things from you. There can also be sudden events like suddenly getting married or suddenly getting divorced. So what happened recently? She suddenly got married, okay? I don't think she was expecting that, but it happened, okay? So that's prime example. So again, with this placement, it's also possible you could get suddenly divorced as well later on. Remedy for this supposedly is duplicating the same ceremony twice. So you do it the original time and then you repeat the exact same ceremony later, or something similar to it, to avoid, later on, possibly getting divorced. So again, Jupiter having this placement, so this could give her knowledge regarding healing medicine, traditional or non-traditional, such as Ayurvedic, or like she could, people with this placement usually are seen with those types of talents. Also, when Jupiter looks onto the 12th house, this would indicate, again, wasteful spending towards charities or spirituality. So again, because of this, a spouse may not like it, so he would want to control her spending in a way. Aspecting onto the second house of assets and family, so she can suddenly have fights in family, or they tend to change homes a lot. I know the last girl I asked regarding this placement, because she had the exact same placement, she did move around a lot. She's moved a few times all of a sudden. Now we have the Lord of the Second and the Eighth. So again, the second represents family assets, eighth house represents sudden events, death, inheritances, etc. Therefore, you can say that she's likely to receive a family inheritance throughout her life. So watch out for that. I told you this first. The eighth house also is a house of sex and secrecy, so she can be very sexual, and she also finds value through her sexuality and sexual encounters. So again, sex can have a high importance to her in her life. Also, she or her family can have a lot of family secrets. She can also choose to spend money on occult things or hidden things. And then when Jupiter transits her eighth house, she can also likely win a large windfall of money. So watch out when Jupiter is transiting your eighth house, because you may want to play the lottery around that time, especially when it comes to, I guess, the time period of Jupiter. Like, I believe right now you are running your Jupiter time in Mahadasha. Also, with Jupiter being the Lord of the Second, she would have a deep love of magic and the occult practices, okay? And that's a fact. And she does do her own thing, so there you have it. All right, so moving on to her 9th and 10th house. Her views on spirituality and philosophies are balanced, and she is reasonable. Scorpio having, placement over these houses. She could be possibly jealous of other people's successes with Scorpio onto the 10th house. Also, this could be because she either feels like she's behind on goals like throughout life versus other people, or she might see other people succeeding, quote unquote, although that's kind of, subjective. She can also be hard on herself, like in terms of what she's doing wrong, which can be a self-destructive tendency that she could possibly have. So, okay, be conscious of that. So, Mercury here is a good position for Mercury. Mercury becomes versatile, intelligent, and Scorpio will have a very spiritual mind or scientific mind. So, again, her mind's always going to be preoccupied with spiritual things. Her mind, she seeks balance in relationships and her communication with people. So again, she's a very balanced and peaceful type of person. So again, Mercury and Scorpio can show someone who speaks or thinks a lot about anything related to Scorpio. So again, sex, occult sciences, hidden things, secrets. Alright, so Lord of the 8th and the 10th, so she may have sudden ups and downs in her beliefs or career, especially in the Mercury Mahadasha. So her Mercury Mahadasha doesn't hit until 2053, which is after the age of 60 and onward. She may be into occult sciences with this placement again, or she loves to discuss things regarding secrets. Like, ooh, did you see this documentary on this alien abduction? Or ooh, did you hear like she was sleeping with so and so? Lord of the 5th and the 10th, so she may use her creativity or children to enhance her status in the world. Example, one of her kids grows up to be like very smart or gets scholarships or something like that, or they end up doing well for themselves in their career, and she could be a proud parent, or she could somehow gain some form of notoriety for having that child. So again, she will enjoy being involved in either occult things or scientific things, or she might also communicate with her children a lot regarding career. 11th house, so very good high gains. So again, with this placement, you know, you have the capability of making very good money in life. Not a whole lot of people have this type of placement. So again, your income, your assets might actually increase later on. So Jupiter rules the house of Sagittarius and second house, so her network circle will help her a lot. So again, network, make contacts with people, they might come in handy with you later on. She also tends to make contacts with people who are very spiritual, very knowledgeable in their field. All right, so moving on, we also have the sun in her 11th house. So sun doesn't necessarily like being in Sagittarius or in this house, in this particular placement for her, as Saturn, who's the original ruler of the 11th house, isn't that friendly with the sun, or their enemies. So she may run into conflicts with her network circle sometimes, or she may be picky in regards to making friends, and she will not have too many friends. She is likely to be noticed in others in her network circle, though, since the sun does illuminate. So sometimes with this placement, sometimes either people are seen to be the eldest in family, or it could also indicate that you have a very bad relationship with your eldest sibling or with your sibling. This placement on the native female's chart can indicate that she can have a bad relationship with one of her paternal uncles as well. So Lord of the 7th and the 11th, fulfillment of desires and wishes will come true. Her spouse or partner will help her fulfill her hopes or wishes, and she could have met her spouse through her network circle. Her spouse can be authoritative in helping her connect to network circles or bringing up her status in the world. Her spouse will also make a lot of spiritual connections in life. Her spouse can help her make gains in life. So having Rahu in the 11th, this is a good placement for obtaining wealth. This is a good position for business. This position can bring in wealth after marriage. Speculative business will be beneficial to her. So, you know, keep going in the business field if that's what you want to do. I'm going to move on to the 12th house, being ruled by Capricorn. Okay. With this placement, just kind of indicates that it's someone who doesn't necessarily like to be too far away from home, or when she happens to be away from home, she tends to get like physically exhausted due to Saturn's influence onto the 12th house, and she wants to be home in her sanctuary. She ends up doing things that relate to esoteric things because Saturn creates karmic lessons in her life related to that. So we also have Venus here, so again, she could possibly have unrealistic expectations regarding her partner, anything Venus controls, such as money, meaning she is likely to be dissatisfied with her partner, like maybe how much they're bringing in, or like how much he's bringing in, etc. Now we have a Lord of the 3rd or 4th house in the 12th, so her communication throughout life can deal a lot regarding spirituality, and what she preoccupies her mind with a lot can be regarding spirituality. She may love dancing also, because the 3rd house, I believe, rules the beat. Spouse may be found in foreign lands, or they can be foreign possibly. Communication in the marriage with a spouse will be very private again. Lord of the 8th in the 12th, so again, she may use her sexuality to somehow benefit herself. Or again, she is like very practical or pragmatic regarding sex. So yeah, that's essentially her chart. Again, spirituality weighs in quite heavily on her chart, so it's pretty much something that, you know, she was meant to deal with quite a bit in this life. I believe she also kind of has some form of karmic debt or lessons to be paid back to family, to siblings. That's probably why she's had like a turbulent upbringing. I think the sooner you kind of realize that maybe things aren't meant to happen, or you're meant to do something in this life, it makes, you know, coping with either depression or with the ups and downs of life a little bit easier. Also, again, you're likely to gain money in this life. Okay, it could be through family inheritances. She could possibly end up winning money, large sums of money. So that's essentially her chart. I think she's on the right path for her career. Hopefully her income, her assets end up increasing after marriage, and, you know, good things come from this marriage. Right, so that was her birth chart. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.